Lee. So, Carol, we now know the U.S. is collecting evidence of possible war crimes and human rights abuses by Russia in Ukraine. What's the White House saying about this investigation, and does it change anything about how the Biden administration is handling its dealings with Russia?
Well, Joe, White House officials are saying that they're appalled by what they're seeing in Ukraine in terms of how Russia is, in their words, targeting civilians, civilian infrastructure, and not sticking to the traditional international rules of war, where they would be targeting military installations. So White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Friday said that the administration is conducting an internal review, collecting evidence of what they say is potential war crimes. Now, the real question here is whether they have the evidence. The bar is that it has to show that Russia is intentionally doing this, not just targeting civilians, but as you'll recall, the alleged targeting of that nuclear facility last week, if that was seen as intentional. So they're gathering the evidence. Whether or not they make a formal accusation with the International Criminal Court, for instance, is a real open question, though, Joe.
The question is always, what can NATO, what can Western countries do to try and stop this or slow it down? We know they've been resistant to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. One alternative solution has been a proposed plan to send Soviet-era fighter jets to Ukraine through Poland. It appears there might be a snag there. What can you tell us about what the White House is saying about that?
Yeah, this is something that administration officials in the last few days had started to be expressing an openness to publicly. And now what we're learning is that behind the scenes, according to administration officials, there's not a lot of momentum within the administration for this issue. And it's for a couple of reasons. One is there are concerns in the U.S. and Poland that this is something that Russia could see as escalatory and potentially as direct involvement in the conflict in Ukraine. There's also this question of the U.S. would have to replace those Polish planes with F-16s. Officials say there's not a surplus of F-16s in the U.S., and so that's raising real concerns. And then just logistically, how they would get the planes into the hands of Ukrainians. Not only that, but how then do they make sure the Ukrainians know how to fly the planes, they get maintenance on the planes, fuel, all of those questions. So officials behind the scenes are saying that this is something that is not necessarily happening anytime soon.
All right. Carol Lee in Washington. Carol, thank you so much.
And it has been different. Kids are starting to catch on that this is not just a fun vacation and holidays and like a spring break. So we need to reestablish the routine. That's the major thing, because all the routines were lost. Education and whatnot. But in general, the situation, I think for us, it's easier being here because their grandma and grandpa are here. And also Noah's bunker, because we've got 2 cats and a rat that we just collected from. The rat is our friends. We have our cat, and there's also mom's cat. So
Noah's bunker.
It's an interesting experience.
Oh, that's a sweet name, and I'm happy to hear a little bit of a restoration of normality being with Grandma and Grandpa. What was the journey like there? How far was it for you to go from the church basement to your mom's house? Did it feel dangerous when you were on that route, and how does it feel outside of the home now?
My husband right now is in the territorial defense, so he was the one who took us. So he knew how to navigate all the block posts. It took us about an hour probably to drive around 15 miles. And it's interesting to see, because we were sheltering in the church for over a week and we didn't see major action. And here we saw the actual broken tanks and the different cars that were destroyed by the either from our side or from the enemy side. There are also lots of block posts. So at first it feels scary, but then when you realize the guys are really prepared to take everything on, so it makes us feel somewhat safe to know that the territorial defense and the army are ready for anything pretty much.
Yeah, Z, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Our viewers may remember that your husband volunteered for the Ukrainian defense team. We learned that last time we spoke with you. You mentioned you've seen him. He helped you move from that church to your mom's house. Have you heard anything about what he's experienced on the front lines, and how's he doing and his team?
He did mention that at times it's very scary because he is a peaceful person in general, despite the fact that he wants to protect the country and protect our family. But at the same time, the group that he is with, the people are motivated and they know why they're doing it. So I think that's the main difference between the Russian army and Ukrainian army and territorial defense, is that we know why we're doing it. We're protecting our land, whereas those guys, sometimes it feels like they have no clue.
Yeah, we have heard quite a few reports of that, actually. Z. Guyman, thank you so much. We are thinking of you. We will continue to check in with you. We're thinking of your kids as well, all of you there in Noah's bunker. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe.
Thank you.